Formula One on 5 Live.
Welcome in for Friday night here in Las Vegas. We're back for another bite of track action. It's qualifying evening, but first, the last free practice session of the weekend. So far, it has been tricky to pin down the exact pecking order. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes topped both sessions yesterday, but Ferrari and McLaren looking strong, whilst Red Bull have struggled so far for pace. It's setting us up nicely then this evening under the lights around this Las Vegas Strip circuit, which also plays host to the first weekend where Max Verstappen could seal his 4th World Championship. And joining me to call all the action every step of the way is W Series Vice Champion Alice Powell, the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, and down in the pits, out in the cold, we've left Rosanna Tennant.
Do you know what, Harry? Good evening. It's actually a little warmer than it was yesterday during the first 2 practice sessions. It's 13 degrees, which is actually pretty balmy compared to the 11 degrees and then the 7 degrees we had in the 2 practice sessions yesterday. So it's all right. It's quite agreeable down here. But the teams and drivers are getting ready. I've just watched Max Verstappen get into his Red Bull, and a few question marks about the setup they're going to be running in this session and into qualifying later on. They were struggling yesterday, Harry. It's going to be an interesting session for them to get the car set up perfectly for qualifying later on. And as I look out across the start-finish straight, fans are starting to trickle in, I would say, to the grandstand. It is by no means full. So where is everybody? Because I'm sure this was meant to be a sellout event.
What happened to the 96%, 8% rule, Rosanna? What happened?
Well, I know the organisers yesterday were telling me that it was full house on Saturday for the race, and that they were expecting a sort of 98% occupancy over the course of the weekend. But, I mean, I'm trying to count all the fans. I can almost do it on 2 hands.
Well, let's see. Maybe they're all just waiting until qualifying a little later on, because we have still got 1 practice session left to go. But Alice, you know, this practice session is going to be really crucial, because so far it's really difficult to try and keep your car on the track so far. At FP1 and FP2, we saw so many lockups, so many cars going off wide, being described like an ice rink. I wonder if you could just describe why we are seeing these kind of conditions around this Las Vegas Strip circuit.
Yes, Harry, we haven't seen anyone venture into the barrier yet. I hope I've no commentators curse there, but it's to do with the track surface. So it's a low track surface, and also this is open to the public during the day. So we've got big American trucks coming down. We've got it's like it's back to being normal Las Vegas. We were walking down the strip earlier on today, but also, which doesn't help, is the track temperatures. We're used to racing in temperatures, having track temperatures in the 40s. Some places this year it's been in the 50s. Miami, for example, it was in the 50s. Track temperature is currently at 17.4 degrees, so that's a lot cooler than what we're used to seeing. It's very dusty out there. This is not a permanent circuit. We are in the desert, even though when you look outside and you're wandering around, it doesn't seem like you are. So all these factors combined together add to the drivers' complaints of there being no grip. And certainly Max Verstappen, who is the head of the Drivers' Championship, he was complaining a lot yesterday. And to be honest with you, that Red Bull didn't look great at all. So they've gone back to their Monza spec rear wing. However, they've been taking bits out of it, but they've been trying to shave it down to reduce the drag that they have down the straight, and we're just getting a shot of it now.
Are they literally taking, a pair of scissors to the rear wing?
The top of the wing doesn't look... It looks like it's been attacked. They really are trying to reduce the drag, certainly down the very long straight. However, then you don't have much grip in the corners, and the Red Bull didn't look great. Max was trying to get the car turned in, the rear was snapping. So when you're reducing the drag, it's not going to help you in the corners because you're going to have less downforce.
So the issue for Red Bull in this particular situation is that their Monza wing is not the same as other people's Monza wings. So there's obviously you have to make a decision as to how many rear wings you make. It's a budget cap thing. Their rear wing for Monza was draggier, more downforce than their main rivals, basically. And that was one of the problems that they had at Monza. It was probably their least competitive weekend of the year. And they ran into the same problem yesterday here. The wing has too much drag, effectively. What's confusing about that, though, is that should help them in the corners. But they were struggling in the corners as well as being down on speed on the straights yesterday. So now they've hacked away at that wing to try and remove the drag deficit to the other teams. But that's going to mean they've got less grip in the corners than yesterday. So we have to wait and see today how that's going to play out.
So it is really going to be a crucial session for Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez and Red Bull as the green light comes on at the end of the session. 59 minutes and 31 seconds remain on a weekend where Max Verstappen can seal his 4th World Championship. The gap coming into this weekend is 62 points between himself and Lando Norris. The easy permutations are all Max Verstappen has to do is finish ahead of Lando Norris and he has the championship. However, Lando Norris can keep things rolling through to Qatar next weekend if he is able to score at least 3 more points than Max Verstappen. If Lando Norris wins the race, then it will go to Qatar, but we're still a little way from that as the first car out on track. One of the Saubers getting to grips with the first bits of track action, but they have to zip past Rosanna Tennant first if they're going to get out onto the circuit.
They certainly do, and I thought there was going to be a flurry of activity, but actually it's relatively quiet in the pit lane. That noise there is Sergio Perez, the first Red Bull to be sent out. He's on the medium tyre. They're just putting the tyres onto Max Verstappen's car. It's still up on the jack at the moment, so no rush on that side of the garage. And it looks like Mercedes are getting ready to send Lewis Hamilton out. Fastest of anyone yesterday in both FP1 and FP2. His car's fired up. The lead mechanic gives the signal and they're lowering the car down onto the jacks, and no traffic coming. There he goes, hard tyres for Lewis Hamilton on the Mercedes.
Let's see what Lewis Hamilton can deliver. Has started this weekend superbly, fastest in both FP1 and FP2, but as we've been saying, really difficult to know if that is a true read of the pace. Just 2 cars out on the circuit at the moment. Zhou Guanyu is the Sauber, and Sergio Perez now just making his way through the 90-degree right-hander of turn 5 before you then sweep through the left-hander of turn 6 past the sphere, which is illuminated in almost a turquoise blue as it makes his way through 7 and 8, quite tight and twisty sector. Then you emerge out the left-hander of turn 9, off Camber exit, down Sands Avenue, which takes you round the right-hander of 10 and sweeping into 11 before you slam on the brakes into the left-hander of turn 12. That sets you up down Las Vegas Boulevard, down the strip, getting up to speeds of almost 350 kilometers an hour, almost 2 kilometers flat out down that straight before you hit the brakes into the left-hander of turn 14. It's a little hop, skip and a jump over the right-hand flick of 15, through 16, down Harmon Avenue, half a mile towards the flat-out left-hander of turn 17. That's also the entrance to the pit lane. They breeze past our commentary box, and before you know it, you're back round to the start, finish straight down towards the left-hander of turn 1. Really, a former parking lot before they've transformed this place into what we now know as the Las Vegas Strip Circuit. It's a challenging track, even with or without the grip.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, actually seeing a plume of dust as Lewis Hamilton speeds off down through turn 16 into 17. He's ventured out on the hard tyre, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time we're really seeing drivers out on the hard tyre this weekend. They have 3 sets of hard, should I say, available for this weekend. 3 sets of medium, 8 sets of soft tyres. There's quite a bit of work going on down on the front left of Pierre Gasly's car. They obviously had a great result last time out in Sao Paulo. He was 9th and 6th in the practice sessions yesterday. Zhou Guanyu is out on the medium, Sergio Perez is out on the medium, whilst Hamilton, Stroll and Alonso are all out on the hard tyre.
Yeah, Pirelli bringing the softest compounds in the range this weekend. The C3 hard, the C4 medium, the C5 acting as the soft. But there isn't a huge flurry to get out on the track, is there? Just the 2 Aston Martins of Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, and still Perez and Zhou out there. Yuki Tsunoda is just getting strapped into his RB. The RB team struggling so far this weekend. They struggled here last weekend as well, last year as well, with Yuki Tsunoda lining up 20th and last on the grid. But Perez continues to put in the miles and will be gathering crucial data for Red Bull with this, slightly revised rear wing then, that they're hoping it will slightly reduce the dragginess of it that's affecting them down that long back straight, down the Las Vegas Strip, and again really down Harmon Avenue as well. The lights illuminate off that Red Bull, and really these are 3 we keep saying this every weekend, don't we? It's a crucial weekend for Sergio Perez, but the more time goes by, the more and more the pressure builds. But it's a street circuit. Sergio Perez should perform well on street circuits, no?
Yeah, he should. He thrives at street circuits, but if you haven't got the car underneath you, then it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to perform well if you suit this type of circuit in terms of driving style. But that Red Bull wing definitely looks quite interesting and a lot slimmer than it did yesterday. It's sort of a straight edge on each edge, and then it sort of curves down, goes up and down again.
Yeah, miles off.
So those adjustments, that's Sergio Perez on the radio, by the sounds of it, have not made much difference to the performance of the car. And we saw frustration from Max Verstappen in the cockpit yesterday, waving his hand. He had to abandon several laps, Andrew.
One of the things that's interesting about the Red Bull car spec at the moment, I've just noticed, is that they've had two different downforce levels of spec in terms of bodywork over the engine cover. This year they started, if people might remember, that there was a lot of talk at the beginning of the year about the kind of the scallop, the scoop that went around from the back of the cockpit onto the top of the engine cover. It was kind of like a bathtub effect almost. Wasn't that different from what Mercedes had on their car last year, but it was quite a lot more pronounced. That was their sort of lower downforce bodywork. Around about Hungary time, they introduced a higher downforce bodywork, which was much smoother over the engine cover. It didn't have that sort of raised, lumpy section. It's almost like, if people know anything about climbing, it's like some of those holds that you see on rock climbing, where the rock sort of sticks out a bit, and you're sort of grabbing it with all 5 of your fingers, but your hand's not completely on it. Here's Lawson's radio.
Yeah, it's very slippery.
Loud and clear.
There's a technical name for that kind of hold, which if I could remember what happens in Free Solo, the Alex Honnold film on El Capitan, I would tell you, but I can't. Anyway, that's the low downforce bodywork. For some reason, they're running the high downforce bodywork here. Now, I wonder, obviously I'm not an aerodynamicist, but they've come here with high downforce bodywork and a too draggy rear wing. They've now had to hack away at the rear wing to make it have less downforce. Wouldn't it have made more sense to bring the lower downforce bodywork?
Yes.
So the question is, why did they bring that in the first place? That is the curious question, isn't it? Why have they brought that spec in the first place, only to then have to hack at it to try and adapt it for the conditions that we were at?
They brought that spec wing because that's the lowest downforce wing they've have.
Got.
That's not the question.
But
the question is about
further.
The bodywork. Yeah.
So that will be the question then, as the Red Bull mechanics then continue to look on at the Red Bull car of Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez now, who has come back into the pits. Joe and Hamilton, who are out on track, are now back in the pit lane. That leaves the 2 Aston Martins still going round, along with Liam Lawson, who's just been reporting how slippery it is out on track, and George Russell in the Mercedes.
So what a lot of the drivers are doing at the moment, certainly Mercedes have done it, the RBs have done it, is it looks like they're going out on a set of hard tyres, they're doing an out and once passed, then coming straight back in, changing to another set and going back in. They're scrubbing a set of hard tyres, potentially for the race tomorrow. So the winning strategy was Max Verstappen last year was mediums to hards, and basically in these cold conditions it's much easier and much safer to get tyres in if they're scrubbed. You have to be a lot more gentle in cold conditions on brand new tyres. So I wonder if they're opting to do that, certainly in these conditions, because it's much colder. And if you do rush the procedure, and obviously in a race you can't go, right, I'm just going to tiptoe round, build my tyre temperature nice and slowly, you're losing time. However, if you don't do it correctly and you maybe pushed a little bit too hard, that is a huge risk to cold graining, and once you get that cold graining, it's so difficult to bring the tyres back, and ultimately as well it reduces the tyre life.
Well, still no one in a mad rush as Alonso comes back into the pits. That just leaves Lawson and Russell out on track. 50 minutes and 30 seconds remain of this final practice session, Andrew.
I just want to say, by the way, just watching Fernando Alonso being wheeled back into his garage, I like his helmet that he's got for this weekend. It's almost like a helmet version of the Sphere, you know what I mean? With the colour and everything, and the way it's sort of over there. It's like, I don't know how to describe it, but that's what it gives me the impression of.
Well, there's quite a lot of tweaks to various driver helmets and car liveries as well. Alpine have gone to their all-pink specification. Sauber have added some flames to theirs. RB have gone for a bit of a retro look with some light blue turquoise with their usual RB colour. So that's what's going on up and down the grid. Now, yesterday we were only interrupted once with a red flag, which wasn't to do with anyone actually crashing. It was to do with Alex Albon having a fuel pump issue. Went back out onto the track after being consigned to the garage for quite a long while, but then the issue still plagued him, forced to stop onto the circuit, and then was wheeled behind the barriers, and then we got going again. He's just at the back of his garage, looking like he's about to gear up to get into the car and join Yuki Tsunoda and George Russell out onto the circuit. So hopefully we'll see a little bit more about what Albon and Williams have got. In terms of the standings, we talk a lot about that Drivers' Championship, which can be won here. It is 62 points between Verstappen and Norris. Then comes Charles Leclerc, who's only 24 points behind Norris. Piastri and Sainz round out the top 5. Then there's the Constructors' Championship, which looks like it will go all the way to the wire. McLaren leading the way, 36 points clear of Ferrari. Red Bull 13 points behind them. Then comes Mercedes and Aston Martin a little further adrift in their own no man's land, and then a really ferocious battle for 6th place in the Constructors after their shock double podium last time out in Sao Paulo. Alpine hold that coveted 6th position, 49 points to their name. They're 3 clear of Haas, and then RB are just a further 2 points behind. Williams down in 9th, and Sauber still the only team yet to get off the mark as the RB of Yuki Tsunoda comes in to the pits, and the mechanics do a practice pit stop, change the tyres, the car goes up on the jack and then is wheeled back down again, and Yuki Tsunoda is released. But that P6 battle is just as ferocious for those teams as the title one is between McLaren and Red Bull.
Yeah, it's huge jumps in finance. I think it's 10 million a place, and we'd certainly take that any day to and go back home. But yeah, it's big jumps in finance, and that's why it means so much to the teams. And often, actually, the teams value the drivers, the Constructors' Championship more than the Drivers' Championship, mainly for that reason, because of the finances that they then get to help towards to next year's car, full of development down the road. Whereas, of course, the drivers want to become a world champion. But, of course, they're employed by the teams. They know the importance of the Constructors' Championship to the team. So it's a big battle, and, people often say, well, it's only 6th, it's only 7th. But that one place, that's a lot of money. That's, like I said, we'll take that.
Well, it was why seeing Alpine on the podium in Sao Paulo, Ocon second, Gasly third, as there's actually quite a lot going on the front left, caked in on the rim of the tyre, where the tyre goes onto the car, down at Alpine on Gasly's side of the garage. But it's why when you saw those celebrations, it was like they were celebrating winning the race, winning a championship. That's how much it meant.
Yeah, and I think because it's been quite bleak in terms of performance for Alpine coming into the start of the season, they were nowhere. They're the slowest team on the grid. There's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes. There's been a few changes behind the scenes as well. So to not only get one podium, but to then get a double podium, that, I can guarantee you no one really expected that at all at the team to coming, certainly at the start of the year, a podium was you need a miracle to have got a podium. So it meant a lot to the team, and it's big points, and points make prizes. Whether they can keep it going, Esteban said in the press conference, it's going to be pretty tough for us to get a podium this weekend. Maybe they got a little bit of luck last time out, but they still kept it there. It was only Max Verstappen that was able to get past them and drive off into the distance. But it's a great result for them, and it spices up that battle. But out on track, Harry, all cars are currently in the pits with 45 minutes of the session remaining.
Well, we're locked in for those 45 minutes, and if you are as well, thank you for joining us. We know it is it's either a late or a very, very early start for you, whatever you are up to. So it is all quiet on the strip right now. Everybody's in the pit lane. But, we talk about Alpine, the battle for 6th. There are 10 teams in Formula 1. Could we get an 11th team? It's not the first time we've had this conversation this year. Andretti's bid to be on the grid rejected essentially by Formula One, their partnership with the General Motors brand in America. Well, now that seems to be reinvigorated all of a sudden with a little less Andretti input and more General Motors input. There now seems to be a bit more positivity surrounding what could happen with a GM entered team, possibly under the Cadillac brand that they look at. I personally would absolutely love to see another Formula One team come in as soon as possible. I think it's only healthy for the sport, but I suppose the original reason so much kickoff with Andretti coming in was nobody wanted another team to dilute the prize pot, essentially.
Exactly that, Harry. And I agree with you. I'm all for more teams joining. I don't just want another team. I want another couple of teams. You know, it opens more seats for drivers on the grids, and I'm always a big I can't get my words out. A big fan of young drivers coming into the sport. We've got a lot of rookies on the grid next year. That opens the door for maybe the F2 champion to come into the pinnacle of the sport, which is Formula One. So I'm all for it, but yeah, of course, lots of the teams put up a fuss because it takes their less money for them in the pot, as we just saw Max Verstappen. He's now the only car that's ventured out on track. I was saying that Sergio Perez just coming down pit lane. As soon as he goes out, he has a lock-up and goes straight on.
Yeah, both Red Bulls out there now trying to get some more lap times in. But, I mean, the crucial thing, I think, Andrew, when it comes to the addition of more teams is that we don't want more teams just for the sake of it. We want competitive teams that bring something to the sport.
Well, it's not about what we want, Harry, is it? It's about what the sport wants.
Well,
but
as a fan,
I take your point. So I think in this particular instance, what's happened is that a whole bunch of things have changed. Michael Andretti is out of the picture for a start. He rubbed a load of people up the wrong way. The way the team has been pitched has changed. It was presented as an Andretti team with support from GM, General Motors. It's now being presented as a General Motors team. And another thing that's changed, I discovered in a couple of hours before this session while I was mooching about the paddock, having chats with various people, is that the anti-dilution fund is going up in GM's case to $450 million.
And it was $200 million.
And I think, as far as I understand it, this is not completely confirmed yet, by the way, so excuse me and sorry for coughing there. That's a one-off for GM, and the number in the new Concord agreement, which is it's the terminology that is used for the various contracts that bind the teams and the FIA and Formula One together, which is up for renewal at the end of 2025. The number might be even bigger again in those contracts, but in this particular case, it's going to be about $450 million, I'm told.
And that will placate the other teams.
It placates the other teams. It gets split between them. I don't know on what basis, whether it's exactly split or whether it's some kind of pro rata thing. Don't know, but it's a significant amount of money, obviously. And it's also a significant amount of money for General Motors to pay, even for a global corporation like that. But if you think about it as a $1 billion asset, which is what a Formula One team effectively is, it's almost cheap.
It's exciting to see how quickly this news has suddenly garnered rumour within the paddock here in Las Vegas, really coming out late last night after free practice too. So we will keep you up to date with all of that and stick across the BBC Sport website for various updates. It would be brilliant. Another team brings 2 more seats to the grid, 2 more exciting drivers perhaps to the grid, but also hundreds, thousands of jobs as well back in a factory and on site at the races as well. So it can only be a good thing. So we'll see how that one develops. 2016, I think, was the last time we had more than 10 teams.
I mean, I'm a big fan of seeing more teams for those reasons I've just said, but Max Verstappen's put his first time on the board, a 142.180 on the medium tyre. He's 2/10 shy of Sergio Perez's time, but just to put that into perspective from the times yesterday, in free practice 2, Lewis Hamilton on the soft tyre was a 133.8, so still a long way to go in terms of finding performance. That was on the soft tyre, but Lando Norris now he's venturing down the pit lane. The first for him going out on track today. And he looked strong yesterday, maybe not as strong as the Mercedes, but he's at the right end that he will want to be, certainly compared to Max Verstappen, who was down in 17th yesterday at the end of free practice 2. And Lando's gone out on the soft tyre.
Lando Norris out on track then, turned 25 years old last week. And while naturally we do focus on that Drivers' Championship and we speak a lot about Norris, we haven't really, I suppose, focused in a lot on the Constructors' Championship. And I know a lot of people, maybe fans, don't quite care as much about that. But if McLaren could well win their first Constructors' Championship since 1998, that would be a massive feat. They're up against Ferrari, and I think Red Bull are a little bit out of the picture now, not mathematically, but McLaren's last title 1998, Ferrari's last title 2008. That on its own will be an absolute spectacle as we come into 2025, with 3 teams, maybe even Mercedes joining the party as well, performing at the very front.
Yeah, it'll be a massive achievement for the team. How old were you in 1998, Harry?
I was 1 year old.
Oh, little 1-year-old Harry. So that's... I'm going to ask you...
How old were you?
I was 4 years old.
Okay.
Nearly 5. Yeah, 5 years old, depending on how you look at it, but yeah. I'm not going to say how old are you.
I can tell you I was already reporting on Formula 1 by then.
You've got all the knowledge.
But it will be, Andrew, how big a deal will it be in Abu Dhabi if it is either McLaren or Ferrari who take the Constructors' Championship, when at the start of the year we all were expecting another Red Bull domination?
Well, I think it's big on a number of different levels, Harry. There is the sort of very basic level of what you just said. You know, Red Bull looked like they were going to dominate the year, and they haven't done at all. And I think it's also reflective of the fact that, you know, yet again, I mean, we forget that Red Bull won the Constructors' Championship last year, but Verstappen could have won the Constructors' Championship on his own. They didn't need Sergio Perez, and in fact, it's Perez's performances that have led to them being in this position this year. But beyond that micro issue, I would almost call it, the macro issues are almost more important, I think, and that is that, you know, when you think about it, McLaren have not been Constructors' Champions since 1998. They should have been in 2007 in terms of points, but they got disqualified from the season because of the Spygate scandal. You can look that up. I'm not going to go into it right now. And Ferrari haven't been Constructors' Championship champions since 2008. So either way, it's an incredibly long time. So it speaks volumes as an achievement for both of those teams, and just shows what they've done in terms of the efforts that they've made to get back to the front, particularly for McLaren, I think, because, you know, again, not only did they start 2023 with pretty much the slowest car on the grid, and then, you know, leap up dramatically through the course of the year with the various developments, but they've held on to that position. But they've also had that really dark period through the 2010s, mainly with the Honda engine, but not just with the Honda engine. They were already off the pace in 2014 when they had a Mercedes engine, which they shouldn't have been, because that was the best engine by a mile that year. And they were off the pace when they put the Renault engine in it as well in 2018, because they thought that the reason for them being slow was all to do with Honda, and it turned out very quickly that it wasn't as soon as they put the Renault in. So that was obviously a big wake-up call for McLaren as an organisation, and actually it was really important for them to ditch the Honda engine on that basis, because it made them realise that they had fallen so far from the competitive level required in Formula 1. Since then, the senior figures in the team who've been variously responsible in that period, Zak Brown, the McLaren Racing Chief Executive Officer, Andreas Seidel, the first team principal, because he made some significant changes, and now Andreas Stella, who's been in charge since the beginning of last year. They've performed a remarkable turnaround on that team. So yeah, McLaren or Ferrari is normally the Constructors' Championship is not a big deal, really, in the context of the drivers. The only people who really care about it are the teams, but in this case, I think editorially it's a big story as well.
Absolutely, and it will be going up against Ferrari, and indeed Red Bull will still try and keep themselves in it, but At the moment, certainly seems like they've only got one driver in it and keeping their hopes alive. Red Bull falling down to now third in the Constructors' Championship, 13 points adrift of Ferrari in second. We're getting a little bit more action out onto the track now. Fastest lap time at the moment is Max Verstappen on a 1:45.88, setting on the medium tyre, ahead of Sergio Perez by 4/10. Lando Norris has emerged out of the circuit now and has just put in his first flyer on the soft compound with a 1:41.6, but he did cut the corner. I think that was in the final sector, wasn't it? So ended up about a second adrift, and Tsunoda is the only other time at the moment, but it's not really representative. But we've also got Joe, Hamilton, Stroll, Alonso's not in there, sorry, Lawson, Piastri, Bottas, Leclerc and Magnussen now all out on tracks. I think this is the busiest we've seen it all session so far, with 34 minutes and 35 seconds on the clock. Tsunoda goes fastest.
And one thing to notice, track evolution is going to play a big part. You know, the more cars going around, it's going to clean the track up, it's going to lay some rubber down. But during free practice 1, yes, they were here from Verstappen.
Front left is dead, and I think rear tire is soon as well.
RIP the front left tyre for Max Verstappen, and that will be from that lockup that he had, I'm guessing, on the way out. That certainly would have helped the degradation for him. He's still circulating at the moment, sitting third in the standings, but just a reference, a 1:35.0 was the fastest time in free practice 1 yesterday. Tsunoda's currently fastest with a 1:37.5.
So what's interesting for me about that Verstappen comment is he's talking about the rear tyres going off as well. So it's not just the lockup, but the fact that just after, what's he done, 7 laps in total, so that's probably 5 flying laps, he's already lost the rear tyres. So that's not a good sign for Red Bull as they start their day's work today.
No, it certainly isn't, and he's a little bit off his teammate, a tenth and a half off Sergio Perez. But Oscar Piastri's out now. Lando Norris appears to be going for another fastest lap, and he does. He goes 6 tenths clear of Yuki Tsunoda. However, Piastri is about to claw that first place spot off his teammate. We're riding on board with him now, and he got very close to the wall there, didn't he, Harry? He's about to come into the final corner, the fast sweeping turn 17, fly past our commentary box window and shoots to the top of the times, and the first driver in the 1:35s and 1.1 second clear of Lando Norris.
I think he got a really nice tow as well from Charles Leclerc, who was just the perfect amount of distance ahead of him, not to bulk him, but to give him that lap time. So, 1:35.759 for Oscar Piastri. It's the 2 McLarens, 1 and 2, but now we're seeing a little more track action. We've got Charles Leclerc on a lap at the moment, so too for the likes of the Aston Martin and Lance Stroll. Lewis Hamilton has just done his outlap and is now coming through the first sector now and looking good in that first sector. Magnussen's out there, Hülkenberg is out there as well. Carlos Sainz is just coming to the end of a lap for him as he gears up for another. He's got George Russell right behind him. Still no action though from the likes of Alex Albon or Esteban Ocon in the pits. As I say that, they're coming out now. So let's head down to Rosanna.
That all got a little bit hairy, Harry, I have to say. Pierre Gasly was let out into the pit lane, and the Williams of Franco Colapinto was also let out. They nearly collided, and then Esteban Ocon joined the party as well. So the three of them trundled out of the pit lane together. That noise there is Alex Albon. He is now heading out into the fast lane, and you were talking about his issues yesterday, a fuel system issue stopping him in his tracks in practice. The team have fixed that overnight, so he is back out running. So a little bit of time away from the track yesterday, which is of course not what the drivers want, especially on such a tricky track. Just interesting to note how the track is behaving and the grip you've been talking about. Last year the times changed, the delta, as we say, between FP1 and Q3, the pole position time, it was 8.1 seconds quicker by qualifying. So yeah, the track does really ramp up here. And George Russell yesterday said he expected the times to be about 3 seconds quicker today than they were yesterday. But at the moment, it doesn't really seem to be happening, does it?
No, it doesn't actually. In track evolution from Q1 to Q3 was 9 tenths of a second. So a big difference. But we were just riding on board with Lewis Hamilton there. We're getting a replay of him getting held up by one of the RBs.
I think it's Lawson. No, sorry, it's Tsunoda, yeah.
He doesn't give a wave, so obviously not too bothered about it. But noticing going down into turn 14, So that is on the strip. It's a very long, they're getting to nearly, I think Lando Norris got to 215 miles an hour yesterday going down through the speed trap, which is just before they hit the brakes at turn 14. Just to show how low the aero that they're running on the rear of the cars. Lewis Hamilton's hands were moving in the braking zone. The rear of that Mercedes, and we saw it yesterday in free practice 2, was snaking all over the place. So that's just showing how little grip there is, but also how low the downforce settings that they're running on that Mercedes car, just to maximise the speed all the way down the straight. Charles Leclerc is going to swing through turn 17. It's a personal best in all the first 2 sectors, and then a fastest overall in the final sector to hop up and just in front of Oscar Piastri by half a tenth.
Yeah, you can tell the track is ramping up because Magnussen's fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Well, let's see what George Russell can do. This is the sound of the Mercedes man into the braking zone of the left-hander of turn 12. Fastest of overall in sector 1, getting up to speeds of almost 300 kilometres an hour now as he embarks out of the exit of turn 12 down towards turn 14. The Las Vegas strip still not as fast actually in the middle sector as Magnussen.
It's only getting worse. The car's undrivable.
Yeah, just a couple more laps, please, Max. Let's try to make the best of this.
That's Max Verstappen on the radio being told he's got to withstand a couple of more laps. He is not happy in that Red Bull right now. Verstappen is currently falling down the order. Bear in mind they went out on the medium tyre and having issues with their rear wing and the amount of drag that is producing for them. He's down to 14th at the moment because Russell has just popped himself up into second. But Kevin Magnussen has gone fastest for Haas with a 1:35.625.
Yeah, lap time's really coming down now. Max Verstappen's in 14th place at the moment. We're riding on board with him now, and that front left tyre does not look happy at all. He turns in and he's got nothing, Harry, and he has to spin it round. And you're probably wondering, well, why is he just circling round and round? But it's really important for the Red Bull clearly to collect as much data as possible, and they'll assess the tyres, but we can assess them from the onboard camera, and the verdict doesn't look very good. As Franco Colapinto has to avoid a queue of cars at turn 14. And what else is going down into turn 1? A wide entry from one of the Williams. I'm not sure if that looks like Colapinto yet. So track still slippy. Certainly the times, we're not at the free practice 1 times yet, so it's going to get better and better. But Lewis Hamilton, Harry's purple in the first sector and a personal best in the middle.
This is not, I can't drive it. I'm going to crash. My left front is completely
Please, box.
Sounding quite urgent there on the pit wall from Gianpiero Lambiase. This front left tyre making that car for Max Verstappen undrivable coming into the pits before he might well lose control. Still then a lot of questions going on down at Red Bull at the moment. They're 15th and 16th, only ahead of Albon, Colapinto, Gasly and Ocon, but the track ramping up with every single lap. Hulkenberg's just gone fastest, but Verstappen's in. Rosanna.
He is, and the team have taken the opportunity to do a practice pit stop as he pulled into his pit box. They're taking the tyres away. Now they've jacked the car up and they're going to take him back into the garage. Sounds pretty drastic, as you say. It was a fairly urgent call from Gianpiero Lambiase saying, box, come in. And obviously Max Verstappen not happy. We've heard that before though, Harry, haven't we? The car's undrivable. But it does sound like this is pretty tricky stuff for them to navigate. And we were talking about the way they're having to set the car up with the rear wing earlier on, weren't we, at the top of the show? It doesn't seem like they've got it in the sweet spot at all.
There might well be a lot of work going on back in Milton Keynes with their simulator drivers, Jake Hughes, Sebastian Buemi putting in an all-dayer on that side of the Atlantic. Charles Leclerc goes fastest by almost 0.3 of a second. The 2 Haas cars are just behind him. Russell Sainz the top 5. Magnussen's going again though, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. I'll tell you what, if this is qualifying with the lap times ramping up with every single second that goes by, we're not going to know where to look.
No, we have got a Ferrari Challenge support race. There was no support races last year, but there is one this year, so they'll be venturing around for their qualifying session. So they'll help clean the track up a little bit, but it's going to improve and continue to improve. and the temperatures are going to continue to drop as well as Magnussen goes to the top of the times. He breaks into the 1:34s, or 1:34.8. The Red Bulls at the bottom of the times now, 5 seconds off the pace for each of them. Max Verstappen nearly 6 seconds off. However, they are only on the medium tyre, but bleak days for Red Bull at the moment here in Las Vegas. And actually that's quite a calming radio from Max Verstappen. Usually he's a bit more angry if things aren't going his way, so maybe they knew coming into this weekend that they were going to struggle as George Russell tries to filter his way past the Alpines. The DRS slams shut, comes into turn 14. He's fastest of anyone in the first sector, and he's caught up behind Zhou Guanyu, and I'm sure he got held up yesterday by him as well, and looks like he's not done any favours to him again today as he swings through the final corner, jumps up into third, just in front of Hulkenberg.
Yeah, that would have lost Russell a little bit of time, but Zhou did try and die out of the way as soon as he could, but it's so hard if you catch a car there right on the exit of turn 14. We just saw a few moments ago as well, Carlos Sainz was pushing on another lap, but then ran deep into the runoff at turn 14, so had to abort that one. He's down in 5th, about 8/10 off, but was up on his time until then. Best lap at the moment, still going to Kevin Magnussen, a 1:34.883. Leclerc, Russell, Hulkenberg, Sainz the top 5. Then it's Hamilton, Piastri, Gasly, Alonso, Tsunoda the top 10. Ocon, Bottas, Colapinto, Lawson, Albon is 15th. Ahead of Lando Norris, who's in the pits right now. Stroll is 17th, Zhou is 18th, and the 2 Red Bulls, Perez and Verstappen, in the pits, trying to find some way forward in this session, but with work to do. 19th and 20th for them, as Hamilton is now out on another lap. He's up on his time in the first and second sectors. Indeed, he's up on Magnussen's best times as well, so it's purple for Lewis Hamilton, who is looking quick. What about Nico Hulkenberg, though? He's just the man coming towards the line now through the left-hander of turn 17. Flat out left-hand king that sees you across the line. Can't improve in that final sector, though, stays almost half a second adrift. Colapinto rockets up to 5th in his Williams. 3 races left for the man who substituted for Logan Sargent for the rest of the year. He'll make way for Carlos Sainz next season, but Lewis Hamilton puts himself back onto the top spot. Fastest in FP1, fastest in FP2, and with just under 23 minutes left of FP3, fastest with a 1:34.565. Confidence breeding quite nicely for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. All this talk about, well, they go well when the track is dirty, they still don't really know where they are. FP2 wasn't quite as good as FP1, but Alice, it's Hamilton's name that keeps going to the top of the times.
It is, and looking comfortable. I'll say comfortable for them, but looking good for them at the moment, and a shot for Haas being up there as well. Of course, we don't know what fuel loads people are running, but one thing that we did see and we did learn from yesterday, should I say, is because of these cool temperatures, they are able to do a push, a cool, and then a push again and improve, and that also helps with the evolution of the track as well, so it makes a big difference. Lewis Hamilton's had 9 laps on that soft tire and still able to go quicker, and that's a real rare thing that we see in Formula 1. Not a high degradation circuit here, and we're just catching a replay of George Russell being boxed again. Here he goes.
Same bloke again, 2 days in a row.
Yeah, nice and consistent.
At least he sees the funny side of that, but he's on a flying lap at the moment, and he's just going a little bit quicker in the micro sectors that we have available. And I think Zhou, it was a carbon copy of what he did yesterday, locked up into turn 5 and then pulls out in front of George Russell, so he's really struggling on those soft tyres. Is Zhou, he's down in 18th place, 2.4 seconds off Lewis Hamilton.
Sounds as if George Russell will be a bit happier that Zhou's leaving Formula 1 than you are, Harry.
I'm not. Look, I think we tell all the stories of every single driver up and down the grid. Zhou's had his run, and I'll miss him. Did you have another point? No. You seem to be painting me with the Zhou Guanyu flag. Look,
you were waving it yourself, man. Yesterday.
Okay, so obviously, if you are just joining us and haven't been keeping up with the news, Zhou Guanyu will lose his seat at the end of the year. That goes to Gabriel Bortoleto. No, but I think we need to tell the storylines of every single driver in this sport. Zhou Guanyu is one of them. He's been here for 3 years. He will lose his seat. Yes, he's not lit up the world. Yes, he's been absolutely markedly off the pace compared to Valtteri Bottas. He's had a good run at it. I still think he deserves a little bit of airtime. Unfortunately, every time we see him, he's blocking George Russell at the moment. So continues round, and he is only faster than Perez and Verstappen at the moment, with those issues being fairly well known right now. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Joe. We'll leave it there, shall we? Well, let us know if you have any thoughts on Joe. Hashtag BBC F1.
No, please don't.
Please, purely so I can put them to Andrew. That would be great. 20 minutes and 8, 7, 6 seconds remain of practice 3. And, well, it all got a bit heated out on track. And, well, it's still fairly busy out on track. Just Magnussen, Piastri, Norris, Stroll, Joe, the 2 Red Bulls and Bottas in the pits. Everybody else is out onto the circuit. It's the 2 Mercedes who lead the way. Russell, a 1:34.475. Just less than a tenth ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Then it's the 2 Haas cars and Charles Leclerc who rounds out the top 5. And this is the sound of Lewis Hamilton, who, well, this time a couple of weeks ago, post Sao Paulo, sounded like he wanted to skip the last couple of races and leave early. Right now, though, Mercedes are enjoying a fairly nice run of form. It's only practice, but I'm sure he'll be having a little smile inside.
I think this is really encouraging for Hamilton. Quite often what will happen is he'll go well on Friday. Toto Wolff yesterday referred to Mercedes as the Friday world champions. It is an issue that Mercedes have had all year, particularly on low grip tracks. They've been quick, and then as the grip goes up, they lose pace comparatively. But that doesn't seem to be happening this morning. And what happens quite often in those cases on the Saturday is that Hamilton might get in it and it doesn't feel the same anymore, and the day kind of spirals downhill from there. But that's not what's happened. He's obviously got into the car this morning. What am I saying? This morning? It's this morning somewhere, Harry.
Back home in the UK.
Exactly.
What about Japan?
Yes, Japan too. Yeah, actually, probably not. Anyway, goodness me. And he's still feeling confident in it. And I think if he could, so there's no reason to think at this stage now why he can't carry on at this level of performance or something very close to it for the rest of the day.
Do you think there's something that gets Hamilton fired up on a consistent basis, is when he feels like he's got a point to prove? There's some shelf life comments that have been made, written down and then made public in a book released recently by Mercedes, Toto referring to the initial signing of Hamilton not on a long-term deal because he is one of the oldest drivers on the grid. He's got that shelf life. Do you think he's taking a bit of umbrage to that, and that's fired him up a bit?
He definitely did take umbrage to those comments, I know that for sure. And I think you can understand why. I don't want to pretend to be a psychologist, but Lewis Hamilton's had a difficult year, and I think those comments hit a raw nerve, because in his darker moments, they're probably questions he's asking himself. Why can't I qualify as quick as George Russell? This is the greatest qualifier in the history of Formula One, and yet he's been beaten comprehensively by Russell over one lap this year. And of course that's going to harm his self-confidence, not his self-belief. Fundamentally, he still believes he's the driver that he's always been. But when it keeps happening, these racing drivers, they're incredibly mentally strong. They're unique human beings in many ways, but they're human beings. So of course he's going to be feeling sensitive about it. So the guy who's held his hand through the most dominant era in Formula One history says something like that. Of course, it was said at the beginning of the year. It just happens to have come out. And it came out at a really bad time, straight after basically Hamilton's worst race of the year, when, let's not beat around the bush, there was a red flag period in the middle of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. George Russell was leading the race. Lewis Hamilton was 14th. That's going to hurt, right? So, of course, he's going to be sensitive to those comments. Of course, he's going to be thinking, what's gone wrong for me this year? I think from what I've been told, they've talked, they've patched it up. I don't think it's going to affect their relationship, in a big way. But the fact that what happened in Brazil, and then his reaction to the comments, and then what he said on Wednesday when he arrived here, Hamilton, about that whole topic, about how he was thinking of just giving up this year in the course of that race, hence the radio comment at the end of it. It all feeds into this sense of what's actually been going on this year. And I don't think this is the interesting thing about Hamilton's season. I don't think anybody at Mercedes really knows why it's happened. And so everybody's waiting to see what happens when Hamilton goes to Ferrari. Is it going to carry on there against Charles Leclerc, or is he going to find his mojo again? But anyway, talking of his mojo, it looks like he's found it today.
He certainly has. A 10th clear of George Russell as it currently stands. But, well, for a man with 104 pole positions, 105 race wins, the qualifying head-to-heads do not make for nice reading when it comes to Lewis Hamilton this year. 16 times he's been out-qualified by George Russell. He'll be hoping he can notch up his own side of the table come qualifying a little later on this evening here in Vegas. You can listen to that on 5 Sports Extra from 5 to 6 your time in the UK, where you are listening to this too. So it's another early one for you, but I think it will be certainly one to tune in for. The way it's going right now, completely empty on the track. I say that George Russell's actually just gone out on his outlap, so just the one car out on track. But right now we're being teed up quite nicely. Mercedes are looking fast. Ferrari were good on the long runs yesterday. Lando Norris, we haven't quite seen what he's had overall one pace so far today. I'm sure we'll see that before the 15 minutes are up. Perhaps he's in the pits at the moment and has been. And the 2 Red Bulls, Aris, look like they are struggling at the moment, or they certainly are struggling at the moment. There's a lot of good storylines out there, but we're seeing the Red Bulls now emerging from their garages. Rosanna.
Both drivers heading out, led by Max Verstappen, and I was wondering, are they going to try a tow? But perhaps they would use Perez to give the tow to Max Verstappen. What do you reckon, guys? Maybe they'll switch them out on track.
I mean, it's going to be worth a few tenths if you sort of grab a tow. You need to time it right, because if you get too low, so of course you're going to be in the dirty air of the car in front. But maybe they're going to give it a go. The thing is, you have to sacrifice a driver, and of course, out of the entire season, Verstappen is 20-1 in the qualifying head-to-head. So you would think Perez is the one that they sacrifice. But there we go. Maybe that's not what they're doing, but they're both out on track at the moment together, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they do get on, because they haven't set a lap time yet during this session on the soft tyre, and even yesterday in free practice 2 they didn't venture out at all on the soft tyre. So it's FP1 they did. Max was 5th, but he was 1.1 seconds off Lewis Hamilton. So with the track at the best it's been all session, it'd be good to see how they get on. And just put that into perspective, Lando Norris was one of the first drivers to set a lap time on the soft tyre, and he is down in 16th place, just venturing out of the pit lane now, 2.5 seconds off. He did 8 laps on that soft tyre, so he'll be hoping to jump up the order as well. But it's going to be really interesting, Harry, to see how the Red Bulls get on now they're on the softs.
It certainly will be. Verstappen still ahead of Perez as they come to the end of the Las Vegas Strip and turn off towards the left-hand side down Koval Lane. Russell is out there too on his own, and now joined by the 2 McLarens, and Williams just emerging from the garage too, or just emerging from the pit lane of Franco Colapinto. So last 12 minutes or so then of the final practice session here in Las Vegas before we go qualifying a little later on. Russell sticking another set of soft tyres on, going fastest of anybody in Sector 1, fastest of anybody in Sector 2. But we're going to keep an eye out as well as to what the 2 Red Bull cars can do. Still running in tandem, Verstappen ahead of Perez. They've done that outlap on the pits and going for their first proper push lap. But from what we've seen so far, with the nature of the conditions, it feels like it will be a build lap first before they can find more time to see if they can do anything about their rear wing adjustments and trying to find some more pace down the straights and down through the corners too. It's double whammy for both Red Bull cars. This is the sound of of George Russell going to the top of the timing screens. A 1:34.2 for Russell. Not quick in the last sector, or not the fastest overall last sector, but quick in Sector 1 and Sector 2 as he eases off the throttle.
Yeah, this will be the last push of quali runs that we're going to see during this session, with 11 minutes of the session remaining. A 1:34.2 from George Russell. He was fastest as well in free practice 3 last year with a 1:34.093. So a couple of tenths off what he was doing last year on Red Bull check. They're starting their first sort of series of push laps, and just having a look at Sergio Perez, he's set some personal bests. He jumps up to 11th place, but Max Verstappen has set no personal bests at all. So he's potentially looking at maybe doing a more gentle warm-up, but he's just coming into turn 1 now, and he'll fly through the first sector, which runs all the way down to the exit of turn 5. His teammate gets out of the way, so Sergio Perez pulls over, so no tow being offered to Max Verstappen there. Hits the brakes. This is where he locked up when he came out of the pits, but he makes it to the apex this time, gets ever so close to the wall on the exit. And Harry, he's only 200ths off George Russell.
Better lap time coming towards Max Verstappen, who navigates his way past the sphere through the long sweeping left-hand turn of 6. Then it gets tight and twisty through 7, 8 and 9. It spurts you out down Sands Avenue, off Camber exit, slightly to the right hand, goes through turn 10, then switches back through the left-hander of 11, down towards the braking zone for turn 12, sweeps it through the left-hander as he begins the 1.9 kilometre back straight down Las Vegas Strip, past Caesars Palace, past the Paris Hotel, with the Eiffel Tower adorned over the top of this circuit, getting up to speeds over 300 kilometres an hour, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Max Verstappen, currently 20th and last, been in the pit lane for quite a while, has emerged and looks like he's found some more speed in that Red Bull, who have been struggling since free practice 1. With less than 10 minutes to go, have Red Bull refound their mojo in time for qualifying? Verstappen now through the flat-out left-hander of 17 to finish off the lap, and he goes fastest by just over half a tenth of a second. Max Verstappen to the top, a 1:34.137.
Yeah, easily done there for Max Verstappen. Perez, 1.4 seconds, only 1.5 seconds off his teammate, so he'll be very disappointed with that. However, the track is getting faster and faster, and George Russell has just gone fastest of anybody in the first sector by a good chunk as well, by 2/10, should I say, quicker than Max Verstappen. So he's looking very strong, and this is going to be the time. It's going to be like the end of Q3, Harry, where these times are going to absolutely tumble. Carlos Sainz is fastest of anybody in the middle sector, so he's pinched that off Max Verstappen, but he's 4/10 shy of George Russell's fastest time in the first sector. He will move up if he has a stronger sector, but potentially won't be as fast as the potential that George Russell is about to show. And Sainz breaks into the 1:33s. First driver to do so in this session was a 1:33.9.
Group felt miles better, much better.
So Verstappen much happier there on the soft tyre, but it's concerning for their pace on the medium tyre.
Well, perhaps is that a weight off Max Verstappen, feeling much more comfortable, Rosanna?
Yeah, and there was a big cheer in the grandstand as Max Verstappen went fastest a few moments to go. Lots of people clapping. I guess they're here to support the driver that could become a 4-time world champion this weekend, but still a long way to go until that happens.
Well, the times are, though, ramping up well, with every lap that goes past. George Russell now fastest by 2/10 for Oscar Piastri, then comes Sainz of Verstappen. But what about Lando Norris? He puts himself up into 4th as he crosses the line, just ahead of Verstappen, who's fallen down to 5th, about half a tenth off. Norris 4/10 off, Sainz 3/10, Piastri 2/10, and that is the buffer to George Russell, who is at the top with 7 minutes to go, a 1:33.570. But we've got a car pulling off to the track, and no yellow flag out. And it's Lance Stroll and the Aston Martin who's pulled off to the side. There's the yellow flag. Where was the delay for that? Why was there a delay for that? It's coming, it's just on the exit of turn 12 as you come down the Las Vegas Strip. He is out of the car and moving. The yellow flags are now out, and there is the red flag. We do have a new race director this weekend. Rui Marquez replaces Niels Wittich, who was let go by the FIA. So Rui Marquez, who has experience, the Formula 2 and Formula 3 race director, stepping up to the pinnacle. And a yellow flag, and now turned to a red, so that's going to scupper quite a lot of these final fast qualifying laps. Doesn't look like there's any damage done to the Aston Martin there, but Stroll out of the car, a little bit of smoke coming off of the brake ducts on all 4 sides of the car, but Lance Stroll walks to the side, helmet off, and that'll be an early end for his free practice 3.
Yeah, just trying to see if there's any damage to the rear there. Doesn't look like there is, because I wonder if he just brushed the wall on the exit of turn 12 as he's gone on to the strip. That'll be disappointing for Charles Leclerc. He just went fastest of anybody in the middle sector, but George Russell's really got the legs on on everyone in that first sector. He's fastest there by a couple of tenths of a second. So the Mercedes working well, at least for him anyway, in that first sector. But it's going to be quite a busy end to the session, I imagine. The clock doesn't stop for free practice, it does for qualifying, so there's 5 minutes and 19 seconds remaining. It should just be, because Lance Stroll has pulled over to an opening in the barriers, that the marshals should, in theory, wheel it in, so there shouldn't be a long red flag, I'm hoping, but there's not a lot of time left available to the drivers on track as the brakes continue to smoke quite a bit, especially the front right there on Lance Stroll's car, so it will cool a little bit if they do wheel it back. A lot of heat soak in those brakes. They have to wait till every single car has passed. So we're having a look now, riding on board with Lance Stroll. He turns into turn 14 and he just loses power. The steering wheel goes blank. He lifts his hand in confusion, and actually he reacts quickly to slam on the brakes to stop, and there's a light on the front of the tub of the car, and that can indicate that it's not safe to touch the car. So he's managed to jump out safely. We won't be able to see if the light's still on. We're having a little look at an onboard with Colapinto. Turns in, a little bit of oversteer on the exit.
Well, I think the problem with that red flashing light, that indicates that it's not safe to touch the car. So Stroll had to jump while not touching the car, and I think that means the marshals can't touch it either, unless they have.
What I just said.
Oh, sorry, unless they have the special. But they've got to have the special gloves, right? Is that that's
correct.
how they can touch it? But that's going to delay us getting going again, if we are able to get going again. Now that everybody has come in, 3 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. I wonder if they'll bother.
Yeah, it's going to be an outlap. It's going to be at least in the 140s. So, and there's 3 minutes, 28 seconds remaining. So it's going to be pretty tough for them to get out on track. We're not seeing any pictures of if that car is being moved. Like you said, it's Lance Stroll's looking a bit demoralised, a bit confused as to why his car has shut down. We've got no shots to see if the marshals are moving it, but yeah, it's going to be real touch and go to whether the drivers are going to have enough time to get out, and yet they are pushing the car backwards now. They've had the green light to touch and push the car back, but they're having to push it forward and push it back. They're not easy to manoeuvre, these cars. They haven't got a great turning circle, not like your road cars, so it's not quite as simple as reversing it back through the gap, but the marshal's doing a great job, and now we're into the low 2 minutes. So if it doesn't go green in the next 40 seconds, there's going to be not too much point going out. But however, the teams may opt to go out and just for a little bit more data collecting.
Yeah, not what Aston Martin would want, though, as there's not much time then to get that car back and assess the damage and what the issue is then on Lance Stroll's Aston Martin in for qualifying. Qualified 14th here last year, did Stroll, and had a really good race, actually, up to 5th in that race when Aston Martin were actually having a rather good run of form back then. Looks like we have got the session back going again. It will be resumed now pretty much 2 minutes to go, 1 minute and 50 seconds remaining. But I wonder, but because you've really got to go out and do an outlap, then you're kind of done.
Yeah, so the session's going to go green in about 20 seconds time, which it doesn't leave enough time at all really to settle out. They'll just gather data and yeah, exactly, practice starts. You have to be on track when the checkered flag is out to be able to do practice starts. So we might see them all venture out, but at the moment no one's going to go any quicker. It's going to be George Russell that once again for the second year in a row is the fastest driver in free practice 3, and we can see from our pictures that all cars pretty much are all lined up in the pit lane ready to go out when it goes green.
Yeah, so they'll head round and take the checkered flag and then do their practice starts. Worth pointing out, we actually haven't discussed it because yesterday, this practice session, we had a few pit lane entry crossing the white line issues. They've changed, or they've made a few changes coming into this session, and I haven't actually seen anything pop up on the race control notes, so it seems like that's worked. What have they actually done?
So they've widened the pit entry line, so it's easier for the drivers, almost blending in with the road markings yesterday. So they've made that line a little bit wider, and they've also put 2 orange markers either side of the track, and in bright orange, and it says pit on it, so it's easy for the drivers to know that's where the start of the pit entry line is. So they need to make sure that their car is fully to the left-hand side. You can't cross the pit exit, or the pit entry, shall I say, line, and they're all trying to desperately get out, because the light will go red when time runs out, and they're all creeping out very slowly. Has everybody made their way out? No, there's a Red Bull right at the very back. That's Perez. Is he going to be able to get out? No, the light's gone red. No. So Perez has to pull over to the side. He was trundling along very, very slowly. So a mistake from Perez and Red Bull there. They're not going to be able to go out and do a practice start, and the Red Bull mechanics are going to have to run down to the end of the pit lane and push him all the way back. Well,
Rosanna's down there. You got a good view, Rosanna?
Yeah, Hugh Bird, Perez's race engineer, just put his hand up and went, oh, and they've all been laughing, because actually Checo Perez had a lot of gap, a big gap between himself and the last car, so he could have actually got through before it counted down to 0. The mechanics are sprinting up the pit lane, dragging trolleys and little skateboards with them to collect the car, but that was foolish. He could have made it out, but actually they're chuckling in the Red Bull garage.
What was that? Was he? Well, yeah, he had the margin, I suppose, then indeed, so he could have made it out. Yeah, that's just another unnecessary error, isn't it?
I mean, you don't have a time ticking down with how long the session's going. It's not like you've got a clock in the car. So his engineer, I'm guessing, would have said,
is that a communication issue?
That's a communication issue. Usually, well, engineers that I've had in the past have said 10 seconds of the session remaining, you need to be at the end of the pit lane, or they do a countdown. Clearly that wasn't communicated, or maybe it was, and Perez thought, you know what, I don't fancy going out to do a practice start. It's too cold, I want to be pushed back into the garage and find myself back in hospitality. But mistake from the Red Bull team and Perez there, but his team are now with him, and he'll get wheeled back down to his garage.
Well, everybody then taking the checkered flag. That is the session over. The checkered flag is out, and it's another Mercedes on top, but this time it's George Russell fastest at the end of the final practice session. Piastri second for McLaren, with Carlos Sainz third for Ferrari. Then comes Norris and Max Verstappen finding some pace right at the very end. Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Have they refound some form in time for qualifying? Verstappen rounding out the top 5 ahead of Hamilton. Then the 2 Williams cars, Albon, Colapinto 7th and 8th, with Magnussen in 9th, Pierre Gasly the top 10. Then it's Hülkenberg, Charles Leclerc down in 12th, Perez 13th. Then just after Perez it is Esteban Ocon. Fernando Alonso rounds out the top 15.
Mate, Yuki just about rear-ended.
There was just an little issue a moment ago, a replay of Tsunoda coming into the braking zone and closing in quite rapidly on his teammate, and just behind, didn't quite see who it was, another car, and having to take avoiding action on that front, such was the speed that Tsunoda was approaching. Tsunoda finished 16th ahead of Bottas, ahead of Lawson, with Lance Stroll issues right at the very end, causing the red flag and having to pull off the track, and Zhou Guanyu 20th and last for Sauber. This is teeing us up quite nicely, I think, Alice, don't you reckon?
It certainly is, and we've got the commentary box door slightly open, and it's certainly been getting colder and colder during that session. The temperature is going to drop by the time we get to qualifying in a few hours' time. At the moment, the air temperature and track temperature has dropped by 1 degree, and that shall continue. The FP2 was at the same time as qualifying yesterday, and that was 13 degrees, track temp 11, so it's dropping as the cars, we can see out of our commentary box window, doing their final burnouts as they go onto the grid for their practice starts.
Okay then, Alice, the crucial question though, who's going to be on pole position for the Las Vegas Grand Prix?
Do you know what? I have to say it's going to be a Mercedes, and I'm going to stick with what I said in our pre-race podcast. I'm going to go with Lewis Hamilton.
Okay, I'm going to go for George Russell. Andrew, any thoughts, any wise words ahead of qualifying?
I've predicted Charles Leclerc all weekend, and I'm sticking with him.
Okay, should note that not everyone got those quick laps in right at the very end because of the red flags. So Leclerc ended up down in 12th, but there's certainly strong pace from the Ferrari. Can Charles Leclerc make it back-to-back pole positions in Las Vegas? We shall see. In the meantime, if you want to stay awake where you're listening, there is plenty to get stuck into on BBC Sounds. You can listen to the Checkered Flag podcast, our preview of the weekend. We'll also be reviewing qualifying once it happens, but there's also a nice 15-minute in-depth interview with Max Verstappen done by our BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, and a half-decent interview, I think, with Kevin Magnussen as well, done by, it was me, wasn't it? Oh, yeah. Kevin Magnussen finishing in a very reputable position.
That's
as well.
why it's only half decent then.
Yeah, it's not as good as Andrew Benson's interview. I'm learning. Anyway, that's all from us. We'll see you a little later, 5 to 6 for qualifying. Until then, this has been an IMG production for Radio